Everyone kept telling us this trip was supposed to be perfect. The last one before everything changed. They were right about the everything changed part. Just not the way any of us pictured it. We'd been counting down to this trip for months. Me and Jake, married 2 years, together 5, and 5 months pregnant with our first. We'd booked a resort in Playa del Carmen back in the fall, before I even knew we were pregnant, and when the test came back positive, we just looked at each other and said, well, guess this is our last quiet one. I remember packing my one bikini that still fit, laughing about it, thinking the hardest part of this trip was going to be resisting the pool bar's margaritas. I remember the night we found out, actually, sitting on the bathroom floor together, both of us staring at that little plastic stick like it was going to change its mind. Jake cried before I did. He picked me up off that floor, spun me around right there in our tiny bathroom, and said, "We're gonna be so good at this." I believed him completely. I want that on the record, because it matters for what comes next. I wasn't a woman who doubted her husband. I was a woman who trusted him with everything, including the parts of me I was scared of. We planned that trip like it was a mission. Jake found the resort, I found the flights. We picked the room with the ocean view because he said our daughter deserved a good view even if she wouldn't remember it. The morning we left for the airport, he carried both suitcases down 3 flights of stairs so I wouldn't have to lift anything, and I remember thinking, this is the man I get to raise a kid with. I held on to that memory a lot. Later, when I needed proof it hadn't all been fake from the start. He proposed to me on a beach, actually, 3 years before this trip. A different beach, back home in Wilmington. Nothing fancy, just him and a ring he'd been saving for since he was 23. He told me that day he'd never wanted anyone to get him the way I did, that most people made him feel like he had to perform something, and I never did. I thought about that a lot, later on this trip, turning that word over, get, and wondering when exactly I'd stopped being the one who got to hold it. I want to say this the way it actually happened, in order, because if I don't, it's going to come out as just one big blur of hurt. So, let me start at the beginning, back when it was still good. The first 2 days were genuinely wonderful. We slept until 10. We walked the beach barefoot every morning before it got too hot. Jake kept putting his hand on my stomach. I was just far enough along that you could really feel her kick, this tiny, stubborn flutter, and he'd talk to my belly like she could already understand him. "You're gonna love the ocean, kid," he told her. First night, half a margarita in, grinning like an idiot. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the happiest I've ever been. Second night, we sat on the beach after dinner with our feet in the cooling sand, and he pulled out his phone and started scrolling through paint swatches for the nursery, arguing with me about whether sage green or a soft gray would look better against the crib we'd already picked out. It was such a small, ordinary argument, and I loved every second of it. I remember thinking that this was what the rest of our life was supposed to look like. Small arguments about paint colors, his hand on my belly under the stars. Nothing bigger than that to worry about. Day 3 is when she showed up. Her name was Bianca. Mid-20s, traveling alone, the kind of confident that makes a pool deck go quiet when she walks by in a white swimsuit. At first, it was nothing. She was 2 lounge chairs down, asked Jake if he had sunscreen to borrow, and that was it. 15 seconds. I didn't think about it again. Except then it was the pool bar that evening, and then it was, small world, running into her on our sunset walk the next night. And then a boat excursion 2 days later where, somehow, out of 40 people on that boat, she ended up sitting right next to Jake for the entire 2 hours. I sat 2 rows back on that boat, alone, hand on my belly, watching the back of my husband's head tilt toward a stranger's laugh for 2 straight hours while I stared at the water and told myself I was being unreasonable. At one point, Jake turned around, caught my eye, and gave me this small, apologetic wave, like he knew exactly how it looked, and had decided it wasn't worth getting up over. That wave sat in my stomach the rest of the day, heavier than anything I ate. That night at the pool bar, I watched her lean in to say something in his ear over the music, and he laughed so hard he had to put his drink down. I laughed at things he said all the time. I couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed like that at something I said. I told myself I was being paranoid. I was pregnant, my hormones were doing backflips. I cried at a hotel commercial 2 nights before we even left home. So when I felt that first twist of unease in my stomach, I shoved it down and called it hormones. I really wanted it to be hormones. But by day 4, I couldn't unsee it anymore. The way he laughed with her, this open, easy laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in months. The way his whole face changed when she walked up, like someone had switched a light on behind his eyes. I used to be the one who did that to his face. I noticed the exact day I stopped being able to. He started disappearing for quick walks. 15 minutes turned into 40. 40 turned into over an hour. Twice, I'd sit on the balcony, hand on my belly, watching the sun go down alone, telling myself there was a reasonable explanation, and some small, cruel part of me already knowing there wasn't one I wanted to hear. I called my best friend Rachel from that balcony one evening, half to vent and half hoping she'd talk me down. I told her about the boat, the pool bar, the wave. "Maybe you're reading into it," she said. "Careful. The way you talk to someone you don't want to accidentally set off. You're pregnant. Everything feels bigger right now." I hung up, feeling worse, not better, like even the person who knew me best couldn't quite believe me over the version of Jake she knew from the outside. I finally said something on day 5. I asked him straight out, "What's going on with you and Bianca?" He didn't even look up from his phone. "She's just chatty." "You're pregnant, you're tired, don't make this into a thing." Don't make this into a thing. 5 words that hurt worse than if he'd just admitted it outright. Because a lie I could have fought. That was him telling me my own instincts weren't allowed in the room. I let it go that night. I didn't want to. I was tired and swollen and scared of being the pregnant woman who ruins the vacation with an accusation that turns out to be nothing. So I swallowed it. I've thought about that a lot since. How much of this whole thing happened because I was scared of being dramatic for noticing the truth. Night 6, I woke up around 1 in the morning and his side of the bed was empty. I lay there for 20 minutes telling myself he'd just gone for ice, gone for water, gone to the bathroom by the pool. Then I heard the door, and I sat up, and he came in trying to be quiet, and the second he got close to the bed I smelled it. Her perfume. On his shirt, unmistakable. Some sweet floral thing that wasn't anything I owned. "Where were you?" I said. Not a question. I already knew. He froze. Didn't even try to lie right away, which somehow made it worse. It's not what you think, Em. We were just talking. We lost track of time. Are you cheating on me?" I heard my own voice crack in the middle of that sentence, and I hated it. Just tell me the truth. Please, don't lie to me right now. Don't you dare bullshit me. Just don't. He sat down on the edge of the bed, didn't touch me, stared at the floor. "I don't know what's happening to me," he said. "I feel alive around her. She gets me." I asked him, straight out, if he'd slept with her. He said no, and swore it, hand over his heart, in a way that almost looked like relief on his own face, like he needed to believe that line himself. I didn't know whether to believe him. I still don't fully know. Somehow that not knowing was its own kind of torture, worse in some ways than a clean answer would have been. Neither of us slept the rest of that night. I lay facing the wall, and he lay behind me, not touching me, both of us wide awake and silent, the ceiling fan turning above us the only sound in the room. Around 4 in the morning, I felt her kick, hard, 3 times in a row, and I put my hand over my belly and just cried without making a sound, so he wouldn't know I was awake too. In the morning, he tried to act normal, ordered room service, coffee, and fruit, set it on the balcony table like any other morning of the trip. I sat down across from him, and neither of us said a word about the night before, and that silence was somehow its own kind of lie. Both of us pretending breakfast could paper over what had just happened 4 feet away in that bed. She gets me. I was 5 months pregnant with his child. I was the one throwing up every morning, the one who couldn't sleep past 4 a.m. because our daughter had turned my ribs into a drum kit, the one who'd been terrified for both of us since the first ultrasound, and on our last quiet trip before all of that got real, he was on a beach somewhere discovering he felt alive with a stranger in a white swimsuit. "What the hell does that even mean, she gets you?" I said. "Gets what? Exactly. Gets you better than the woman carrying your kid?" He didn't answer. Which, by that point in the trip, had become its own kind of answer. It wasn't only the perfume on his shirt, either. That part actually might have been the smallest piece of it, if I'm honest. It was everything underneath it. I found out later he'd been texting her at night while I slept. Little inside jokes building up over 5 days, plans to grab a coffee before checkout. It was the way he opened up to her about things he hadn't told me in months. I found that out from him, crying, later, not from snooping. Because by then, he didn't even seem to think it needed hiding anymore. The physical part happened in one bad night. The emotional part had been leaking out of our marriage all week, in plain sight, while I sat on that balcony telling myself it was hormones. I did look at his phone once, day 7, while he was in the shower. I'm not proud of it, but I also don't regret it, because it was the moment I stopped arguing with myself. There was a message thread with her, nothing explicit, nothing I could hold up as clean proof of anything physical, just an ease between them. Inside jokes about the boat trip, a voice memo I didn't let myself play. What got me most was a message from 2 nights before, at 11:40 at night, while I was asleep 4 feet away. "You're the only person on this whole trip who actually listens." I used to be that person. I didn't know exactly when I'd stopped being her. Every look, every laugh, every time he leaned toward her instead of me at dinner, it all replayed in my head like a slideshow I couldn't stop clicking through. One of the housekeepers, an older woman named Dolores who'd been making up our room every morning, caught me crying on the balcony on day 6 and just quietly set down an extra towel and touched my shoulder. Didn't say a word about it. Didn't ask. Some small part of me has thought about her more than I expected since we got home. A total stranger who saw more of the truth in 30 seconds than my husband managed to admit in 5 days. I was furious. I was humiliated. I was so sad I could barely hold my own body up some mornings. "This is such bullshit," I whispered to myself, alone on that balcony, like saying it out loud would make it less true. And underneath all of it, there was this ugly little thread of anger at my own stomach, at her, at the baby, at the fact that being pregnant had made me feel like I had to just sit there and take it, quietly, so I wouldn't be too much. That's not a fair thing to feel toward your own child. I know that. I felt it anyway. I kept thinking about our 20-week ultrasound, 6 weeks before this trip, how Jake had held my hand the entire appointment, how his eyes actually teared up when the tech pointed out her heartbeat on the screen, how he'd asked the tech 4 different questions about her measurements because he wanted to understand every single number. That man sat in a dark little room holding my hand like our daughter was the center of the universe. I couldn't reconcile him with the man laughing on a boat with a stranger 2 months later. I still can't. Honestly, maybe both versions were real. Maybe that's the worst part. Last day of the trip, I told him I was flying home alone. I was shaking so hard packing my suitcase I could barely fold my own shirts. I screamed at him, actually screamed, I hate you so damn much right now," probably loud enough for the next room to hear, that I couldn't look at his face for one more day. He stood there, pale, guilty, didn't argue, didn't come with me. At the front desk, changing my flight, My hands were shaking so bad the clerk had to ask twice for my confirmation number. Jake stood a few feet away the whole time, not saying anything, and at one point he reached out like he might touch my shoulder, and then just didn't. Pulled his hand back. That non-touch told me more than anything he'd said all week. He stayed. At the resort for 3 more days. While I flew home 5 months pregnant, alone, in a middle seat, crying into an airline pillow next to a stranger who was polite enough not to ask, landing in Charlotte by myself was its own kind of awful. I remember standing at baggage claim, watching couples reunite around me. Some guy running up with flowers for his girlfriend, and I just stood there with one hand under my belly, alone, waiting for a suitcase that had his stuff mixed in with mine. I went home to our nursery, half-painted, one wall done in this soft sage green we'd picked out together, and I sat on the floor of that unfinished room and cried until I didn't have anything left. Those 3 days alone were their own strange purgatory. I told my mother a half version of the truth, that we were having problems, because I couldn't say the whole thing out loud yet without falling apart completely. Rachel came over the second night with takeout I couldn't eat and just sat with me on the nursery floor, not saying much, which was exactly what I needed. I checked my phone constantly, hating myself for it, half hoping for a text from him that actually meant something and half hoping he'd just disappear so I wouldn't have to decide anything. 3 days later, there was a knock at the door. Jake was standing there, eyes red, face wrecked, and before I could even say anything, he was on his knees in our doorway. "Please," he said. "Please, Em. It was a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. I love you. I love her," meaning the baby, not Bianca, and somehow that distinction mattered to me even in that moment. "I'll change everything. Whatever it takes." He kept talking, fast, like if he stopped the whole thing would collapse. He said he'd hated himself every hour of those 3 extra days. He said he'd almost gotten on a flight home the first night and then couldn't face me. So he stayed, which somehow made the staying feel even worse once he said it out loud. He said Bianca had texted him twice since I left, and he hadn't answered either one. I didn't know if that last part was supposed to comfort me. It didn't. I stood in the doorway with one hand on the frame and one hand under my belly, and I let him talk himself all the way through it. Every apology, every promise. Because some tired part of me needed to hear the whole thing before I could decide anything, part of me wanted to fall into that doorway with him. God, part of me wanted that so bad. 5 months pregnant, exhausted, scared of doing this alone, some scared, tired piece of me wanted to just let him back in and pretend Playa del Carmen never happened. I didn't say any of that, though. I just looked at him. On his knees, and I felt the baby kick, once, hard, right under my ribs, like she had an opinion too. "I can't do this right now," I said, and I closed the door. I don't know what happens next. I want to be honest about that. I don't know if we get back together, if he actually changes, if this is the story where we heal, or the story where I raise her on my own. Some mornings I hate him. Some mornings I still love him so much it terrifies me. And those two things live in the same chest at the same time, which nobody warns you is possible. Rachel asked me last night if I regretted the trip, and I sat with that question longer than I expected to. Part of me wants to say yes, obviously, burn the photos, erase the whole week. But there's another part of me that keeps coming back to those first 2 mornings. His hand on my belly, that ridiculous toast to the ocean, the paint swatches on the beach. And I don't know how to regret those without also regretting the truest version of us I have on record. Maybe you're allowed to grieve a week that was both the best and the worst thing that happened to your marriage. I'm choosing to believe that's allowed, because it's the only way I can make sense of missing him and being glad I closed that door in the same breath. I keep the boarding pass from that flight home in the nightstand drawer of all things. I don't know why I kept it. Maybe as proof that a woman flew home from paradise 5 months pregnant and entirely alone, and got up the next morning anyway, and the one after that, and kept getting up. What I do know is that I stopped lying to myself the second I smelled that perfume. That's not nothing. For 5 days on that trip, I talked myself out of my own eyes, called my own instincts hormones, made myself smaller so I wouldn't be dramatic. I'm done doing that. Whatever happens with Jake, whatever this next year looks like, I'm raising this kid as someone who trusts what she sees, even when it's the last thing on earth she wants to see. She's still kicking, by the way, every night around this same time, like clockwork, right when I'm lying here thinking too much. Maybe that's her telling me she's still here, still mine, no matter what her father figures out about himself. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just a baby moving. I finished painting that nursery wall myself, the sage green one, 2 days after I closed the door on him. Badly, if I'm honest. There's a patch near the closet where the color doesn't quite match, but I stood back afterward and felt something close to proud. I don't know if Jake will ever see that room finished. I don't know if he'll be the one teaching her to swim or if that's going to be someone else, or just me. Some days that uncertainty feels like standing at the edge of something. Some days it feels almost like freedom, which surprises me every single time. Either way, it's the steadiest thing in my life right now. And for tonight, that's enough.